Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
Now we'll go ahead and move on to Jaylen Brown and his recent comments. I believe he had an interview a couple of days ago, and they asked him about his future in Boston long term. And this quote is directly from him. He said, "I don't know. As long as I'm needed, it's not up to me. We'll see how they feel about me over time, and how I feel about them over time. However, whatever it is, however it is, whatever it is, it makes sense. But I will stay here where I'm wanted. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correct. I enjoy the time that you have now. If it's your career, if it's your whole career, if it's your whole career, if it's not, if it's not." Some of the greatest players of all time haven't finished with their organizations. Michael Jordan retired a Wizard. So it looks like Jaylen Brown has some concerns with his future as a Boston Celtic. And so with that being said, what are our thoughts on his recent comments, and where do we think Jaylen Brown could fit best?
Well, definitely, like you can get a sense from Jaylen Brown. He has spoken about there's a section of a Celtics fan base where it feels like they don't give him enough appreciation as a player, where they're a lot more harsh on him as a basketball player whenever he has shortcomings, or in general in comparison to someone like Jason Tatum. And of course, Jason Tatum's the undisputed number one on that team, but Jaylen Brown's as good as it gets as a number two option next to Jason Tatum. It does feel like whenever Jason Tatum has a bad game, there's less of a backlash from the Celtics franchise compared to someone like Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown, a lot of people have spoken about trading him in the offseason, whenever, especially in the last offseason, when the idea of Kevin Durant floated around, and Jaylen Brown spoke about this. He was like, I know Tatum and KD are friends, and my name was being floated around, so he had to talk to the organization and Tatum and see what's up. So it's definitely part of him that feels like he isn't appreciated as much as he should be. But in terms of where he'd fit best, honestly, this is about as best of a roster he's ever going to get in the league, if I'm being honest. I mean, you have a guy in Jason Tatum who's a top 10, top 7 player in this league, and an absolute stud. And you have a great defensive team and a good head coach. You have guys like Robert Williams next to you. You have Al Horford. You have Grant Williams. You have Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, Marcus Smart. A whole bunch of basketball players that contribute to winning. And in terms of where he'd fit best, this is the best roster for him. But if he wants to be someone who wants to be the guy and be a number one option, then I think there's a lot of teams that would go after Jaylen Brown, and he doesn't even have to be number two. He can be a guy that's like a 1B. There was talks about Atlanta in the offseason that they wanted Jaylen Brown. The Knicks, they're looking for their superstar in Jaylen Brown. But what I feel like the team that would be best for him is the Boston Celtics. This team, they've been to the conference finals multiple times with Jaylen Brown there. They've been to the finals as well. I feel like this roster offers him the best chance to be a winning basketball player. So this is where I feel like he fits best.
Yeah, man, with Jason Brown coming out talking about, hey, I don't know if my future is going to be with Boston or not. I feel like, ever since the when KD, the KD idea was floated, I feel like he got a little stunned. He was like, oh, they want to trade me for KD. I thought I was going to be here for good. Hey, man, if I was him too, I'd be pissed off, I'd be like, yeah, I want to be 1A. I want to be a star of my own team. I can show Boston like, hey, I don't need you guys. So I feel like, for him averaging 27 points as a second option on a Boston team, I feel like he can be best on another team where, like the Knicks, they need, a key star. A guy like him could come in, fit into that system with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. I feel like he can take over in that type of system. Or you can, another team that I see he can go to, Sacramento Kings. They got the pieces, pair him with Fox and Sabonis. That's a very young team right there. And that could be another big three. Or another team, a team like Memphis. They got some draft picks. They got some pieces to move. Pair him with Ja. There's options. But to me, I feel like, I don't feel like he's well respected in Boston. Like Abdi mentioned, when we see Tatum have a horrible game, he doesn't get that same retaliation from the Boston fans that Jaylen Brown does. So for me, I do see, why he's coming out saying all this. I don't know if I'm going to stay here. Maybe my future does belong here or not. But, we'll see. But to say what's the best option for him, it's still Boston. You know, making multiple Eastern Conference Finals, making the NBA Finals at that young age with the young team that they have with Tatum, with Robert Williams, with the addition of Malcolm Brogdon this year, with Marcus Smart. They have a phenomenal team that still can make the finals and win it. So who knows what can happen if maybe they do make it to the finals again this year. Maybe they do come out with a ring. He's going to stay, but we'll see. I feel like his mind is like 50-50 right now. He's on the skate of, hey, I want to leave. And another thing is, if he doesn't make an all team, right, the contract issue for him, he doesn't get that extra. I think it was $27 to $28 million extension on his contract. So it's going to be bumped down from, like, I don't know how much it was. I think his max can be 287 if he makes an all pro team. It was like 287. Jason Tatum was like 300. So I feel like, the money wise is a big part of that if he doesn't make an all NBA team, and who knows what can happen.
I mean, honestly, I kind of understand where Jaylen Brown's coming from, simply because, obviously he's given everything to the Boston Celtics franchise. Him and Jason Tatum pretty much came up together and, built this thing from the ground up. Even, during the days when they had Kyrie Irving and stuff like that, these guys were able to, move past the whole Kyrie Irving situation. They're able to, build this team together. Obviously, I've always been one to say that the duo that they got in Boston isn't a strictly 1-2, duo. I think it's a 1A, 1B situation between those two guys. That's how special of a player I think Jaylen Brown is. So I understand his frustration, not necessarily his frustrations, but where he's coming from with these comments on his future in Boston, simply because when your name is floated out there in every trade conversation for every superstar that's out there on the market, obviously that's not going to sit well with you, because at the end of the day, you're going to be sitting there thinking, why is it always me that has to be the first one to go? Or, why is my name being tossed in there? Some players take, pleasure and pride in that. And some players take that as disrespect because of, what they've given to the franchise, so there for that, I completely understand where he's coming from. To be completely honest, I believe the best fit for Jaylen Brown, if he were to leave the Boston Celtics, would be the Atlanta Hawks. Plain and simple, a team that they acquired DeJounte Murray, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and they're still in the same position that they were in last year. I think Jaylen Brown would be a huge help to this team, and you put him up there, you put him with Trae Young, you put him with DeJounte Murray. I think, obviously it's going to look a little different, but Jaylen Brown is just a true bucket getter, and we all know how great of a defender he is. So I think he'd slot in on that team really, really smoothly, really easily. I think, that obviously the Trae Young and DeJounte Murray experiment isn't working out to what the Atlanta Hawks hoped it would work out to be. But I think, if they make a move for a guy like, Jaylen Brown, and they're able to get rid of John Collins' contract and, maybe potentially move Clint Capella and kind of get some pieces to fix up that roster, I think, the Atlanta Hawks would be in a way better situation than they are in right now. But, the other teams you guys have mentioned, like the New York Knicks and the Sacramento Kings and Memphis Grizzlies, I think those are all, good viable options for Jaylen Brown as well. I think, Jaylen Brown can go anywhere and he'd be a huge contributor to any team. The Knicks would probably be the second on my list. You put him on the team with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. They have a true big three over there. I'm sure if they were to move for a guy like Jaylen Brown, I know RJ Barrett would be one of the first people to go. Sacramento is, a team that, obviously surprised everybody this year. You put him on a team with Fox and Sabonis, that team can, be a better team defensively. And, maybe, he could be, he can guide the Memphis Grizzlies in that young team and give them a little bit of a sense of the direction in the Western Conference. But, right now, I think the best fit for Jaylen Brown would be the Atlanta Hawks. But it's going to be interesting to see what he does in I would maybe say a year and a half, what he does with the Boston Celtics. But obviously his current fit is the best fit. You always want to stick with a team that's competing for the NBA championship every year. And as we all know, the Boston Celtics are obviously one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, with the Milwaukee Bucks. It's really them two teams. And, you have a team like Philly that's going to be competing with them. But as we all know, there's only going to be two teams coming out of the Eastern Conference. It's either the Bucks or the Celtics. So, obviously Jaylen Brown should just stay in his current situation, which gives him the best opportunity to win a championship. But like Big H mentioned, of course, contract extensions and, making the first team all NBA or second team, people, look forward to those contract, those bonuses at the end of the season. So, obviously, for Jaylen Brown to grow as a player, to really truly be that number one option on the team, he kind of has to get out of Jason Tatum's shadow. But with the way that things are going right now, I don't think he's going to be able to shake that off in Boston. So he's going to have to be able to move somewhere else to truly be that number one guy that he's trying to be in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't necessarily, I understand where he's coming from with these comments for sure.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.